They said Ethan Cole never smiled. Not at board meetings. Not at charity galas. Not even on the day his company crossed the $10 billion mark and the entire trading floor erupted in applause while he stood at the window,
standing in front of it,
watching the city below with the same expression he wore every other morning, quiet, controlled, unreadable. He was 34 years old. He had built Cole Ventures from a single investment fund into one of the most powerful private equity firms on the East Coast, 3 Forbes covers, a Gulfstream G700, a 180-foot yacht he had used exactly twice. He had been named one of the world's most eligible bachelors by 3 separate magazines, a fact he found so irritating that he'd had his PR director send formal complaints to all 3 publications. Ethan Cole did not do romance. He did not do sentiment. He did not believe in things he could not calculate. What he did believe in, the only thing, really, was control. 2 nights before he walked into that bookshop, he had stood at the center of a rooftop gala in Midtown, 300 of the city's wealthiest people, the Manhattan skyline blazing behind him like something he owned. A woman in a red dress pressed her hand to his arm and laughed at something he said. He smiled back, automatically. His reflection caught his eye in the floor-to-ceiling glass. He looked exactly like someone who had everything. He felt exactly like someone standing in an empty room. He left at 9:45 p.m., told his driver to take the long way home, stared out the window for 40 minutes without picking up his phone. That was Tuesday. Wednesday, a girl with paint-stained fingers told him to move. Here is what you need to know about Nora Walsh. She was 27 years old. She illustrated children's books quiet, careful, full of small details that most people walked past without noticing. She helped at the bookshop 3 days a week, not because she needed the money, but because she loved it. The smell of old paper, the weight of a book you hadn't discovered yet. She did not own a television. She had never heard of Cole Ventures. She had absolutely no idea who Ethan Cole was. And that total, complete, utterly genuine indifference was the most extraordinary thing Ethan Cole had ever encountered in his life. He came back to the bookshop on Thursday. He told himself he needed something to read on the flight to London. This was not entirely untrue. He found out her name from George, the silver-haired owner, who had run the shop for 30 years and talked about books the way other people talked about old friends. She's the one who actually knows where everything is, George said, with the warm pride of a man describing his favorite person. I just pretend to be in charge. Ethan paid for his books. He glanced toward the back of the shop, where Nora was reorganizing a display with the focused, unhurried energy of someone who had nowhere else she'd rather be. She didn't look up. He came back the Tuesday after that. You again, she said, without turning around. I need a recommendation, he said. She turned then, and looked at him the way an artist looks at a still life, frank, unhurried, taking inventory of shape and shadow, where other people only saw surfaces. She pulled a paperback from the shelf without looking and held it out. Giovanni's Room, James Baldwin. It's not a business book, she said. I noticed, he said. It'll make you feel things you're not used to feeling. She set it on the counter between them. Most people find that uncomfortable. He bought it. He read it on the flight to London alone in the back of his jet at 40,000 feet, the city lights of the eastern seaboard dissolving beneath him. By the time they landed, he had to sit completely still for 5 minutes before he trusted himself to speak to anyone. He told her that the following week, she laughed bright, unguarded, surprised out of her, and it did something to the carefully maintained architecture of Ethan Cole's chest that no quarterly report had ever come close to doing. I knew it, she said. Knew what? That there was an actual person in there, somewhere. He asked her to dinner on a Wednesday in November. She said no. Not, "I'm flattered," but not, "perhaps another time." Just, "No, thank you." In 34 years, across 4 continents, and 100 negotiating tables, Ethan Cole had never heard those 3 words arranged in that particular order directed at him personally. He blinked. "No? I know who you are," she said, her hands still moving along the shelf, calm, unhurried, as if this were the most ordinary conversation. "I looked you up after the 3rd time you came in." She stopped, looked at him. "You're used to getting what you want, and I think you're interested in me the way you're interested in anything you can't immediately figure out, not because of who I am, but because of how I make you feel." A beat of silence. "I'm not interested in being a project, Ethan." The use of his first name landed differently than he expected. Not warm, not cold, just honest. "That's not," he started. "Maybe it isn't," she said, "but you don't know that yet, and neither do I." She handed him a book he hadn't asked for and turned back to the shelf. "Come back when you've thought about it." He thought about it for 3 weeks. He thought about it in board meetings, on conference calls, on the long quiet nights when the penthouse was very still and the city glittered outside his windows like something he owned but couldn't touch. On the 18th day, his assistant forwarded him a link without comment. A lifestyle blog. 2 photographs, blurry, taken through the bookshop window. Billionaire Ethan Cole's mystery bookshop girl a new romance? Her face wasn't visible. Her name wasn't mentioned. Not yet. He called George directly. "The article. Has she seen it?" A pause. "She came in this morning. How is she?" George chose his next words carefully. "She's wondering," he said slowly, "if the attention was ever really about her, or about the novelty of a place where no one knew your name." Ethan set the phone down. He picked up Giovanni's room from his desk. The spine was cracked now, the corners soft and bent from airports, conference rooms, once in the back of a town car in the rain. He had read it 4 times. He had never in his life read anything 4 times. He put on his coat and walked out of the office without telling anyone where he was going. The shop was quiet when he arrived. George looked up from the register, read his face, and said nothing. Nora was in the back, packing a box of books. She didn't turn when the door opened. "We close in 20 minutes, she said. "I know. I won't be long." She stood up then, turned, looked at him with the careful expression of someone deciding how much to say. "I'm not angry about the article," she said. "I'm not fragile. I just needed to know if you understood why it mattered. Because you don't want to be a story someone tells about themselves." Something shifted in her face. "Am I part of it?" she asked quietly. "The novelty. Am I just the bookshop?" The question sat between them in the warm, lamplit air. He thought about the gala, the red dress, his own reflection, the empty room feeling. "No," he said. "You're the reason I keep coming back." He set the worn, battered copy of Giovanni's room on the counter between them. "I've read it 4 times. I've never done that with anything." She looked at the book for a long moment, its cracked spine, its soft corners, proof of every mile it had traveled in his pocket without him quite knowing why. Then she looked at him, and something in her expression, something that had been carefully, reasonably, wisely closed, chose, on its own terms, to open. "There's a ramen place on Bleecker," she said. "Loud. Tables too close together." "All right. I'm ordering whatever I want. I'd expect nothing less." He did not hate the ramen place. The broth was extraordinary. She ate without self-consciousness and talked about the picture book she was illustrating, a small bear afraid of the dark, and Ethan leaned forward across the too small table and listened in a way he hadn't listened to anyone in years. Not calculating, not assessing, just present, She asked him what part of his work he would do if no one was watching. He sat with it for a long time. "The beginning," he said finally. "When something is just an idea and you can't see yet if it'll survive. That moment before you know." She was quiet. "That's the best part of a drawing too," she said, "before you've committed any lines, because it could still be anything." "Because it could still be anything," he agreed. They stayed until the staff were gently restacking chairs. At the corner where she turned toward the subway, she stopped. "You were different tonight," she said. "Is that good?" She looked at him, the same painter's gaze, the same frank assessment, but warmer now, like a room where someone had finally turned on the lights. "I think you're still figuring out who you actually are," she said, "but I think you're finally interested in finding out." A pause. "That's the best thing a person can be. Interested." She said goodnight and disappeared into the subway. Ethan stood on the corner in the December cold hands, in his coat pockets, the city moving all around him. Then he smiled. Not for a boardroom, not for Forbes, not for anyone at all. Just because. The next morning, for the first time anyone could remember, he held the elevator for someone rushing toward it in the lobby. She thanked him. He nodded. It wasn't a big thing. But it was new. Years later, a journalist writing a profile on Ethan Cole asked him to name the moment his life changed. They expected him to say a deal, a number, a company. He said, "A woman told me I was blocking the poetry section, and I moved, and I've been moving in the right direction ever since." The journalist wasn't sure what to make of that, but Nora, reading it over coffee the morning the piece came out, same camel coat, paint still on her fingers, a new book open beside her cup, laughed the same laugh he'd first heard between the shelves on West 4th Street. And Ethan Cole, sitting across from her, smiled again. Still new, still real, still the best thing he had ever figured out how to do. Some people walk into your life and hand you something you didn't know you needed. The only question is whether you're willing to feel what it makes you feel.